Hey there YouTube, welcome back to today's project guide. Today I'm going to be showing you how I installed my manual boost controller and boost gauge on my 2G Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX. It's a pretty straightforward procedure. You're going to want to make sure that you get yourself about 7 feet of 3/16 vacuum hose. You're going to want to get a set of sockets, a small wrench. You can use pliers, a pair of scissors to cut the hose. I used some needle nose pliers for some of the fittings that I picked up. You're going to also need to pick yourself up, obviously, the manual boost controller. You're going to need a couple of 3/8 vacuum caps. Let's see, what else? A boost gauge and a little bit of a run of vacuum hose to run to that. It was relatively inexpensive to do this whole job. The boost controller I picked up secondhand off Facebook. It's actually right up top here. It's a Grimspeed, and I stuck with the Grimspeed because it's pretty solid. It's kind of tough to turn. It locks itself right into position. Every turn clockwise is a 1/4 psi, and the same counterclockwise. So if you want to turn the boost up, you turn it to the right. If you want to turn it down, you turn it counterclockwise. There's actually an electric boost controller from the factory, and it's usually mounted right down here underneath where my air filter is. The bracket actually broke, and right here it is. You do not want to remove it. It will send a check engine light to your dash, and that's not cool. You don't want one of those. So what I did was I just disconnected it, put a couple of vacuum caps on it. If you look real closely, you can see right on the end there's one for the boost source and one going to the wastegate. The hoses run right across here to your turbocharger and your wastegate actuator. If you look, let's see if I can get a shot of that for you. There is a nipple on the bottom of the wastegate, and there's also another nipple on the bottom side of the turbocharger. Not on the top side here, but if you look underneath where I have my intake run, there is a little nipple on the housing, and that's where you're going to want to hook up your boost controller to. So basically, you're going to disconnect the stock hoses, the stock lines that are right here. From this solenoid, they run across. There's a little T apparatus in the center. You can get rid of all of that. You don't need it. Then what you do is find yourself a little place to mount your controller. I happened to stick mine right up here against the firewall. There's a free bolt. Fit perfectly. I got a couple of hose clamps right here. Now here's the key. You want to make sure you install these correctly. The T-style ones, the bearing and spring ones. The boost source comes out the bottom of this unit, and then the nipple off the side runs to the wastegate. So when you install this, you want to make sure you have it all the way unscrewed counterclockwise, so you're not over boosting. You're going to run your lines, one from the turbocharger to the bottom of your boost controller, and then the other side you run a line down to your wastegate, which is right here. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to show you is the boost gauge install, how I did mine. I'm going to show you on the interior side where to run your lines, where to get key on power from, and I'll tell you where other people that I've read, other people have actually hooked it up so you can use your dimmer switch on the interior to make it work. Alright, we're inside the car. Right up here, it's my little cheap Equus boost gauge. It was a free item that I got for some points that I got at AutoZone. From what I can tell, it's pretty accurate. It hasn't given me any trouble. And in the kit, it comes with some hard line, the gauge, and a couple of fittings that you can tap onto the back. And there's one piece of wire that runs off for the power and another shorter wire for the ground. I basically took the hose and ran it down through this crack right here, all the way down. If we hop down underneath the driver's side dash, I can show you where you can push the hose through the firewall. Alright, let's get down here. Now if you look up here, I've got a little bit of a mess. The blue wire is actually the power. I ran it inside of my fuse box. Right over here, I ran it inside of the fuse panel, so it would just be key on power. The light's not bright enough to really mess with you during the daytime, and at night it's a pretty dim light also. It just barely allows you to see it, so it doesn't really mess with your eyes when you're driving on the road. But you hook up your key on power right here. I'll pop that fuse cover open real fast and show you where I tapped in. Alright guys, right here is where I took my power wire. I ran it into that 10 amp fuse. Just pressed it around the bottom side of the fuse and pushed it in. And if you look on the top of the fuse box, that ends up being the fuse to gauges. This fuse works great. It's key on power, so every time I turn the key on, the gauge lights up. Also, one thing, when I ran the wire through, I did notch out a little bit of the top of this fuse panel cover, just so the wire would fit in there nice. Well, once you got your power in, and you've got your hoses laying down here at your floor on the driver's side, you're going to want to tie them up someplace out of the way, someplace where they're not going to get in the way of your steering column here. One other thing I wanted to mention is if you don't want to have your boost gauge running off of key on power and you want it to be able to run and work in conjunction with your dimmer switch down here, you can actually route that power line underneath the dash here, have it come up around and into your center console, and you can wire it in to the light that's behind your cigarette lighter. If you notice at nighttime in your 2G, when you turn the dimmer switch, your cigarette lighter also gets brighter or dimmer. Right here, if you follow your steering column down, you can see there's a black hose. I routed it down here behind the factory insulation. I cut a little hole in the top right corner here, and from there I ran it down to the rubber boot on the side of your steering column. All I did was take a little razor blade and slice it, and I pushed the hose on through to the other side of the firewall, and underneath your hood you can find it, locate it, and I'll show you where to tee into next to get a good boost source. Alright guys, back under the hood here. After you've passed your vacuum hose through the firewall at the steering column, it should poke out right down here. Let me see if I can get a shot of this for you. There she is. If you look right there, that's the inside of the steering column. That's the vacuum hose. I passed it right through the rubber. It's a nice tight fit, so hopefully no water leaks through or any engine smoke or anything like that passes into the cabin while you're driving. You route it right up top here by your clutch master cylinder. And right here, if you notice, we have a little, I believe this is a fuel pressure solenoid. So if you see over here at the top of your manifold, your intake manifold, there is a nipple coming off of it, and that's where you're going to get your boost reading from. It's going to run right down here through this piece of insulation, and it runs right over to the back of this fuel pressure solenoid, I believe. What you do is you just snip the line right here. You take your plastic T and you just put the straight part through and connect both of these hoses. It's pretty snug, so I didn't have to put any clamps or any zip ties on there. I did, however, put a clamp on the bottom of the T, and this is actually the hose that runs out of the firewall there. This is the hose you're going to need to connect. This will give you a positive boost reference. It'll show up on your gauge. After you have all your wiring finished, you'll have a nice little way to keep track of how much pressure you're pushing through that little turbo of yours, or big turbo. It shouldn't take you guys more than a half an hour to throw it all together. Just get your supplies from your local store, order them on Amazon, whatever you want. Alright guys, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content. I'll be posting videos as fast as I can, hopefully daily, Monday through Friday. My next one is probably going to be on suspension and how to install these coilovers. It was an interesting job and there was a couple of issues that I found. Stay tuned.